Hey, have you ever thought about having a podcast of your very own? If so, great news. Spotify has a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money. It's all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. So, Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer. So, no matter what your setup is like, you can get started creating as soon as today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify, and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify, so that's pretty cool. And with Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since I discovered Spotify for Podcasters, I really just feel like it's taken my podcasting to a whole nother level. So I highly recommend you give it a try if a podcast is something that you've been thinking about as well. Just download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Hey there, I'm Julie, and this is the Married to Addiction podcast. If you're here, then you're probably what I call my secret sister. We're in a situation we never asked to be in and fighting a battle we never wanted to fight. We're faith-filled women who are married to an alcoholic, and it affects every inch of our lives. If that sounds like you, then this is a safe place for you to land. Married to Addiction is a faith-based podcast where I help you find the tools and strength you need to navigate your husband's addiction without losing yourself in the process. So please subscribe and tune in as often as you can, because your husband's recovery is important, but so is yours. Hey there, I wanted to just take a quick second to make sure that you have heard about the new program I just launched called Simply Nourished. Now, you may wonder what in the world nutrition and wellness have to do with being the wife of an alcoholic, and the short answer is a lot. When we're going through hard things, which obviously this situation is a really, really hard thing, we often just completely neglect good eating habits. We turn to junk food for comfort. We don't take care of ourselves in any way, shape, or form because we've completely put ourselves on the back burner because we're so focused on what's going on with our husbands. And the problem with that is that not only now are we going through a hard thing, but now we are completely run down. We have no energy. We don't have any good nutrition in our bodies. And all of that just basically makes us completely unable to cope with anything in general, but most especially the difficulties that are involved with having an addicted spouse. So, of course, this can lead to just so many problems down the road. Health related or food related health issues are a really big issue for women just anyway. And when you pile all the rest of this on top of it, it just really makes it that much harder. So, the purpose of Married to Addiction as a whole has always been to help you take better care of you. And this program is no different. The goal is basically to just teach you simple, good nutrition and wellness. I keep it really simple for you, thus the name, for you as the wife of an alcoholic, so that you can care for your body, which will make you better equipped to handle everything else that's going on. So I would love to have you join me in that program. To find out more about it, you just go to my website, marriedtoaddiction.com, click on the Need Help drop down, and you'll see Simply Nourished there. I'd love to have you join us. Hello, and welcome to episode 68 of the Married to Addiction podcast. This episode is called, Is Your Husband Hiding Alcohol? And my guess is, if you are listening to the sound of my voice right now, you either are currently dealing with this or you have dealt with this in the past. This was definitely a common occurrence for my husband and in our situation. We had a lot of battles over it. And so we're going to talk about today why your husband hiding alcohol is a problem, but we're going to talk about how it's a problem for more reasons than you might think. So as I said, this is a really common occurrence. I remember my husband having some very creative hiding spaces, and I remember me feeling like it was my mission in life, my goal in life, to find them all and to dump out everything that I found and to get in his face about what I had found, where I had found it, why he was doing this, et cetera, et cetera. And we had this same battle over and over and over again. So we definitely want to talk about what's going on their side, but we also want to talk about what's going on our side. So, what I want to talk to you about specifically today is if he's hiding alcohol, then that means what? He doesn't want you to find it. He doesn't want you to see it. He doesn't want you to know he's drinking. And why doesn't he want you to find it, see it, know that he's been drinking? Well, probably because just like in my situation, there have been many, many, many times that when you do find it, you confront him, and it's a major problem between the two of you. So, really, if you think about it, the main reason why he doesn't want you to find it is because he knows it's going to be a fight. And if it's a fight, then that probably means that you have been or are trying to control his drinking. I would have never put those two things together when I was doing this myself. I just thought I was trying to make him stop. I needed him to stop. I wanted him to stop. So, of course, I'm going to find it and dump it out because he needs to stop. But that is all about control. And if you've listened to any other episode, hopefully you know by now that his drinking is not ours to control. So here's the thing. We think that by continuing to confront him, we're constantly letting him know that it's not okay, right? So I need to let him know every single time I see it, smell it, know about it, etc., that it's not okay. Because if I do that, it's going to make him stop, right? It's going to let him know that it's not okay with me and that it's a threat to our marriage, etc., and that's going to make him stop drinking. But in reality, that's not the case because, as we've talked about before, drinking, by the time they're at the point where they're hiding alcohol, and it is a common occurrence for him to be drinking, choice is taken out of it. It's a much bigger problem than just he's making that choice. In reality, what happens is when we're constantly letting him know that it's not okay with us, and we're constantly in his face about it, and we're looking for alcohol and we're dumping it out, all of the things, a lot of times that's going to just backfire. So it's not only not going to make him quit because we can't control it, right? But it's going to backfire. And a lot of times what happens when we search for alcohol and we find it, it just teaches them to hide it better. It teaches them to get more sneaky with it because it's something that they need. This is not a want anymore. This is addiction. This is a need, and he feels he needs it. And psychologically and physically, he probably does. So it's not going to just make him stop hiding it and stop drinking. It's just going to make him hide it better. In my husband's case, and again, I've said this before and I'll say it forever as long as I'm speaking on this podcast. Our husband's drinking is not our fault. We didn't cause it, we can't control it, etc. However, we can influence it. So in my case, I caused a big, huge scene every time I got home from work and knew that he'd been drinking, or when I would search the house for alcohol and find it, so I knew that he'd been drinking, at some other point. It always was a huge big deal. It was a knockdown, drag out. It was awful. It was horrible, and it happened all the time. I made it very clear to my husband that I did not want him to drink around me. Well, when I was here was in the evenings. So guess what happened? He started drinking in the morning. He said that his initial plan was to drink in the morning, get it quote unquote out of his system, and then be sober in the evenings when I was here to avoid the fighting and all of that. But that's not how addiction works. So what happened instead is he started drinking in the morning, and he kept drinking through the afternoon, and he kept drinking through the evening. And before either one of us knew it, it was awake to asleep that he was drinking, and he could no longer work. And it had just snowballed because he changed his drinking patterns to try to avoid having arguments with me. So again, was that my fault that he did that? No. But did I influence him changing times when he was drinking? Well, of course, I did. So I just want you to know that it can have the opposite effect, essentially, of what you're trying to fix, of what you're trying to have happen. A lot of times too, they will use the confrontations and the arguments and all those things as an excuse to drink. So if your husband's hiding alcohol and it's your mission, like it was mine, to find every single drop of it, that's going to be a case for, well, I'm so stressed out because my wife is always at my butt about my drinking, blah, blah, blah. Or maybe if he's a drinker at home, now he's going to start going to the bar because he can't, quote unquote, hide it at home because you're always searching for it. Well, he's just going to go to the bar. And then that obviously opens up a whole nother situation of drinking and driving, et cetera, et cetera. So when we are closely tied to the addiction, which, as you probably know right now, or by now, that is not what we need to be doing, because that is not helping our husband, and that is totally taking us down with it. What happens is, a lot of times, that's when our husband will start hiding alcohol, because he knows that we are closely tied to the addiction and that we are very invested in the addiction as to what, trying to control it and what we can do to try to control it. And we're looking for things. And so he starts to hide things. So what do we do? If looking for alcohol is just going to potentially cause other issues, if it's keeping you tied to the addiction and keeping you in a terrible spot as well, because now you're all consumed with this addiction, with finding alcohol, what is the other solution? Well, first I want you to know that, like I said, confronting him over and over again and looking for stuff that he hides, never, in all of the times, and there were hundreds, in all of the times that I had my gotcha moment that I was so focused on, those gotcha moments when I would find it and I would say, I knew it. And I would go to him and I'd be like, you lied. You said you weren't blah, blah, blah. You said this and that. And I just freak out on him and, in that moment feel kind of vindicated because I knew it and you're terrible and all of that. Never was the end result in one of those moments him saying, you're right, let's go to the treatment center right now. It never happened. What happened instead was, like I said, pushing him deeper into hiding, causing chaos, absolute chaos in my home for my children to see on a regular basis, dividing us as a couple even further and further and further, making him feel like I was the enemy. It never had the desired result of him saying, yep, you found it. Yep, you're right. I'm going to go get sober. Let's get in the car. So if this isn't going to work, if our husband's hiding alcohol because we're searching for it and us searching for it is pointless, which it really is, what do we do? What do we do? Don't we need to keep telling him about himself? Don't we need to keep telling him, aha, we found it and this is not okay? It's not going to lead to the desired result. He knows you don't want him to drink. If you never told him again that you don't want him to drink, he would know. You've made that abundantly clear, I bet, because I sure know I did. So giving him that space, which we've talked about before, is important, because that's the space that God fills in between, where we were screaming and yelling. When we step back and we open that space up, that's the space that God fills, so he can be in his ear instead. But on our side of things, we have to learn to untie from this addiction. And I probably say that on every single episode. And the reason for that is because it is so critical. Because, like I just said, God needs to be in that space, not us. Because this is for your own sanity. Because it is not for him. You're not untying for him and doing him a favor to give him a free pass or whatever you're telling yourself, because you can't fix his drinking. You can't. None of the searching, none of the pouring out, none of the confrontations, none of the screaming, yelling, any of that is likely to have your desired result. So you have got to learn to untie and give this to God. You need to have boundaries in place, because that's what will protect you from any fallout, any effects of drinking behaviors in your home, any of those things. You've got to have those boundaries. And like I said, you must give his recovery over to God, because it is between him and the Lord. That is the space that God needs to fill. And if you are too busy screaming at him in his ear about the alcohol you found that he hid, he can't hear God. He can't hear that still small voice if he's got a screaming, yelling voice in his ear all the time because you found alcohol. So I know a lot of this stuff feels backwards when you are in the thick of this and you are so desperate to just get him to stop. And you're telling yourself, well, if I throw it out, if he hides it and I find it and I throw it out, he won't drink tonight. First of all, that is a fallacy because in my case, I would hide it out or I would throw it out. And guess what? My husband would go to the store and buy some, or he would just start the next morning. So it's not going to have your desired outcome, unfortunately. So we need to learn to control the things that we can control, which are those things like untying, boundaries, giving it over to God, etc. Of course, if you need help with any of those things, that is exactly what we work on in my membership for Wives of Alcoholics called the Secret Sister Circle. We work on all of these day-to-day things. How do you navigate all of these things like your husband hiding alcohol? All of those little scenarios that you find yourself in day after day, we work through those. I teach you what to do, what not to do, and what is most likely to help instead of hurt. So if you would like to join us there, we would love to have you. If you just want to check it out, get a little more information, just head to marriedtoaddiction.com and click on the Need Help drop down, and you'll see the Secret Sister Circle right there. We would love to welcome you in. I hope that that's been helpful for you. As always, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time. Hey, one more quick thing before I let you go today. Do you follow Married to Addiction on either Instagram or Facebook, or both? If not, I would love to have you join me over there. It's a great place to stay connected with everything that's happening with Married to Addiction. I post updates about my podcast episodes, of course. I post about my freebies. I post about my programs. I post encouragement in the way of Bible verses and things like that. I also post just like some helpful little teaching nuggets sometimes too. So I really think that you would get a lot of value out of that as the wife of an alcoholic. And I would love to have you join me on either Facebook or Instagram, or both. You can find me at facebook.com/marriedtoaddiction or just at marriedtoaddiction on Instagram. I hope to see you there.